Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I say that because I am in the Central Time Zone. It is 13:03. For those of you that are from America that don't know the 24-hour clock, that would be 1 p.m., 3 minutes after the hour of 1 p.m. Central Time. The rest of the world who watches this knows what 13:03 is. All right. I'd like to welcome those who showed up today. It's summertime. We have low attendance each week now, but we have different faces. And actually, Scott, I was thinking about you last week, and here you are this week. So I guess maybe it helps to think about people when they show up. So appreciate you showing up, Scott. And so what is today? July 15th.
Yep.
Wow. Well, let's see. What is special about July 15th in the history? Does anybody know in history? I'm asking because I can't think of it right now, but I'm sure something's happened in the past.
Well, yesterday was Bastille Day in France.
Bastille Day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Little revolutionary situation there in France back then, you could say. You know, I got a question for you. Do you remember the years of that? This is off track from our meeting. Wasn't that happening? I know of two things in the world at the time that helped the American colonies win and have dominance over the British armies at the final whatever. Okay. And I can tell you two things. Something had to do with the French. Actually, both of them had to do with the French outside of the U.S. Okay.
And it is
Go ahead.
the National Respect Canada Day.
Oh, that's today?
Yep.
So all of our Canadian friends, we're supposed to respect you just for today, though. We don't respect you any other time, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Hey, I respect everybody. And I know those Canadians, they love you, Max. They really love you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
especially in CCIM. If you ever go to our CCIM meetings, you'll see we got like 8 to 12 countries represented every time. So anyway, okay, so here you go. So if you recall, there was this thing called the slave trade across the globe. There's a couple of islands in the Caribbean, Eastern Caribbean, that a lot of that badness flowed through. It involved sugar, slaves, and what was the third major commodity?
Banana.
What's that?
Bananas.
Well, okay, so the island of Saint Kitts, that's where a lot of this was flowing through. And there were like, I was there and I got a history lesson while I was there one time. There were tens of thousands of British and tens of thousands of French troops on the island of Saint Kitts fighting each other all the time. So the British were distracted because of the slave trade during the time that the colonies decided we needed to be independent of the British rule. Okay. And so the French kept them very busy over there in St. Kitts. I think it was rum, sugar, and slaves. I think those are the three main things. I may be wrong. So why am I even talking about this? Because you said Bastille Day. What was the purpose of Bastille Day, and when was that time frame? Anybody know? Hi, Asher.
Hey Keith, Bastille Day was when they basically raided the Bastille, which was a prison primarily for I think political dissidents, and they got a lot of guns and kickstarted the French Revolution.
All right. Were those years the exact same time as when we decided to do the same thing here in the colonies?
1789.
It was 10 years later. Wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, the French had a lot of territory in America. Well, let's just say in North America at that time. So they had a lot of interest in fighting the British on both continents. Well, both continents, on that continent and on St. Kitts, for mainly commerce reasons, as they all dictated back then. Hey, Rich. Anyway,
good morning, afternoon, all.
That's too much gobbledygook for our recording. Let's get back to commercial real estate. Sorry about that. Welcome, Camille. And let's see, Rich. Thank you. Hey, Rich, Max was the first guy here today. Can you believe that?
Yep.
Anyway,
I was embarrassed because Rich, when I joined that night, the first time in a long time, he was out there and I tried to talk and I couldn't because I had no clue what you guys were talking about. So I couldn't add anything to the conversation. I said, I'm
Okay.
going to go and be on time this day.
all right. So Blair has something he wants to bring up. He ran across, and I know a couple others know about this website or about this company, Blair. So if you want to toss it out there, let's go with it.
Sure. And incidentally, Rich is buying drinks today.
Is he?
Oh,
Yeah, because of his big closing. And again,
Oh, Rich is-
congratulations, Rich.
Thank you. Thank you. But Blair, I missed what you said though. What did you say? Rich is what?
Buying drinks.
Oh, buying drinks. Absolutely. The bar is open. Thank you though.
Not quite sure how you're going to do that, but anyhow.
It is.
I came across Trap,
How do you spell that?
EPP.com, which I hadn't seen before. I haven't had the opportunity to fully explore it, but they talk about having a lot of data and analytics on our industry on their website. And interestingly enough, you mentioned that I talked last week about AI, and what got me to this was when I had asked Chat GPT 4.0 about a certain question, it responded and gave me references that it had used, and TREP happened to be one of those references, which I hadn't seen before. And that particular topic had to do with TI allowances in retail in different markets, which is something that I'm extremely rusty in, so I needed to get updated. And
Okay, for those listening to the recording, TI stands for tenant improvement. So TI allowances. Go ahead, Blair.
yeah, and it was very interesting that all of this data was available there, and just thought I would share the site, and everybody might find a use for it at some point in time.
Blair, could you spell that out in the chat so we know how it's spelled, please?
T is in Tom, E is in Robert, E is in Edward, P is in Paul, P is in Paul.com.
Trip.
That,
Thank you.
that was Blair's chat. That's how he spelled it out in chat.
That
He
works for me.
chatted it.
Thank you.
He's very creative.
Hey, Keith, you remember we had Trep a few years back when we were at Sperry. Do you remember?
Yeah, I did.
yeah.
Do you want to talk about any of that, Rich?
I'd love to. Trep is a great resource. It's probably the leading source for loan information. It's very extensive. It's a pretty expensive. It's about we got 5 users at $400 a pop, and this is 2019, I think. And
I was one of those, wasn't I?
Yeah, I think you were.
Yeah, or 2018. Oh
Was
yeah,
it 2019?
19. Yeah,
Yeah.
we were with Sperry. Yeah, that's right. I forgot. Yeah.
But back then, guys, there was not the distress that we have now. So I think having access to that now would be a lot more valuable in terms of finding out nationwide, all asset classes, all loan types, CMBS, mezz loans. I mean, it's really an extensive program. But yeah, and like I said, you pay for it. $400 a month's not cheap. And that's assuming you can get that deal. I'm not so sure as a single user you can get that kind of a deal, but Blair, if there's an interest level, I certainly would be interested if there was a group that wanted to get together and make a proposal. We had 5 people and they gave it to us for $400 a pop. But if you are someone who wants to try to work on distressed assets, get distressed loans, and kind of beat it before it becomes public and the whole world knows about it, they give you alerts. They give you 90-day notices in terms of something that's hit an NOD versus it's actually in distress. Very, very extensive program, very detailed, but also they underwrite properties for you. So you can their underwriting is written as if they were a lender, which is the most important way to look at a deal. So I'm a big fan of TREP. And it's probably a better time now than when I did it when Keith and I did it all those years ago, because again, there's just so much more distress in the marketplace. So I hope that helps everyone.
Thank you, Rich.
Anybody else on trip? Well, that was quick. Thank you, Rich. Blair, feel free if you want to check it out. I don't know if it benefits you. Well, it should. You're in office as well as industrial, so it could be highly beneficial for you and anybody that associates with you. All right, so go ahead, Nancy.
Is that across all asset class? So, okay, it's multifamily to office to whatever. Okay, that's good to know. Thanks. A little spendy, but good to know. Powerful.
And you realize that when we say distressed properties, that's across all asset classes too. It's not distressed in terms of what we think of all these years about, man, that is just such a rundown piece of property. No, it's all about the financing world these days, as opposed to how the financing was just 2 years ago and how people are getting caught up in that because of the cycles. That's what we mean by distress. Does
Meaning that they're
everybody
that they're in default. Is that
Well,
basically?
we
what it
didn't say
means?
default yet. Go ahead, Blair.
I'm looking at their website. They list industrial, lodging, mixed use, multifamily, office, retail, and then they have alternative properties. And they also have business lines, advisory services, banking and lending, CMBS, commercial real estate, and corporate CLOs. And I have no idea what that is.
Corporate CLO. Paul, you're in the business brokerage world. What do you got there? Corporate CLO. Brent? They'll look it up they'll Google it now, knowing them. I do not know what corporate CLO is. Okay.
I don't know.
All right, we can move on. I was about to say there is no set speaker. This is summertime. This is great that there's 12 of us here. I'm impressed. We had 12 last week. It's just people are coming
That's
home. Go ahead, Max.
Keith. It's collateralized loan
Loan.
obligation, CLO. It's the structure.
Okay.
I just
So
want to
that's-
make a note of Moody's made a post just earlier today referencing insurance risk and the matter that's putting a big burden on almost all commercial owners and their operating expenses at the same time that, and particularly in multifamily, where they're looking to grow revenue, but yet the expenses and insurance are outpacing revenue growth.
I can give an example in Mobile, Alabama right now. If you're on your own, you don't have a huge major portfolio where you can have a nationwide insurance policy. You can expect to pay at least $1,500 a door on your multifamily for insurance. Did you know, Rich? Does that compare to California, Rich? $1,500 a door.
I've never done it on a per door basis, but it doesn't surprise me. I mean, we got insurance carriers leaving California in droves. It's getting scary out there. I mean, I've got clients that have literally had their insurance companies call them and saying, "Hey, we're getting out of California. You got to go find a policy. We're canceling your policy." I mean, it's frightening.
Yeah.
And we haven't had the major calamities that you folks have had, with hurricanes and whatnot. And knock on wood, we haven't had a major earthquake since '94. So, I don't want to jinx it, but it's really surprising to me that we've had these extraordinary issues with insurance. But man, I'm getting scared. I really am. In fact, I have one client who's got about 50 or 60 properties in their portfolio, and they actually have self-insured. And that may be the route to go for the larger institutional investors.
What does self-insured mean?
Basically, they can collateralize their buildings because they have X amount of equity, and then they can put an insurance policy together based on that. How to structure it, how to do it above my pay grade, I'm sorry, I don't know, but it's a real thing being self-insured, but it basically will, it's kind of like, you're not all of your 60 properties, unless they happen to be in the same place or same area, are going to get hit with a particular, whether it be, a hurricane or whatever, or even an earthquake. But then you can insure against it, so you can put all of your collateral together and support that one property that does in fact suffer any.
So I'll give you an example, Nancy. We'll drop it back to the mobile home park. A lot of mobile home park owners self-insure, which means they're only concerned about paying basic liability insurance on their property. They're not concerned about the physical mobile homes, trailers, or whatever that people are living in that they own, that the park owner owns, because they say they can fix that if there's damage. So that's what they're saying by self-insured.
One other note is most insurance has a component of reinsurance. So basically you're self-insuring the base risk between maybe $1 and $10 million. And then if it's over 10 million, there's a reinsurance company like Lloyd's of London that will take that insurance risk over a certain amount.
Wow. Well, I mean, it's not just the commercial world. I mean, my home insurance doubled in 2 years. And
Yep.
that's not just, I mean, that's home, and then there's earthquake, and then there's car. It's all gone up. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'm here in
Yeah.
Southwest Washington, and it's insane. And there's some certain companies that won't write policies because they're in a wildfire zone, a flood zone, a hurricane.
And the mortgage
Tornadoes.
companies are also getting this data. So now they're looking at the climate risk insurance loss risk, and they're saying, I don't know if we want to write under this location. So it's really becoming a challenge.
The easiest way to explain the self-insurance, basically an insurance that is high deductible. For example, it's not your first 1,000 or 5,000 or whatever. It's going to be somewhere around 45 to 50% of your loss is going to be you first, you pay for that, and then they would take care of the rest. Simple as
Serious?
that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if it's a $2 million property, you have to basically assume the first million.
Well, the damage of the damage
Of the
that you
damage.
have. For example, you have a big damage, and you have most of the insurance companies, people they get on their properties somewhere around 80 or 75%. And, they pay the first 20 or 25% of the damage, or that whatever that happened to their property. And the insurance company will pay the other 75 to 80% of that particular damage. Let's say it's $100,000, you pay $20,000 yourself first, and then the company pays the other part in the regular one. But in the self-insured one, you pay half and they pay half, something similar.
And is that only in commercial policies, or is that across the board?
No, I mean, I was working for a restaurant company that the health insurance was self-insured. And that's what they did. So,
I see. Thank you.
yes, ma'am.
So let me drop that back to the statement, distressed properties. It's a bigger, broader definition now in our world. So it's not all about just financing. It's also all about your costs, your operating costs. It's also the other major factor in there is a lot of companies pass along their costs. I was reading about this yesterday. I got to say this correctly. You guys need to correct me. Several asset groups, the landlord or the owners of those assets are experiencing increased costs. Oh, I know what it is, in fuel and in food. Okay, now what asset groups are affected by fuel and food? Those are two of the big categories. And I forget how they classified that yesterday when I was reading it. But that's a major component now of this whole big picture of owners with portfolios getting into a fix, and they have to make decisions. Am I going to inject more equity so I can get refinancing? Is my current lender going to even refinance? If I, even if I meet all the requirements, will they even bother to refinance me anyway? I mean, you got multiple factors now, and that's what we mean by distressed properties in our lingo today, right? You guys can correct me or add to that or change that, but that's my understanding. So it's not about the interest rate and a monthly payment to buy that building. It's a lot of other things too. Right?
I thought that distress means that the inability to keep up with the loan service.
That's what I just said. It's not just about loan service.
Right.
Not even close.
But how do you then quantify it? So if someone says, oh, I've got a 60-door, distressed 60-door, how should you interpret that?
Well, what are they asking you to do? Help them sell it?
They want to sell it, yeah.
Okay, anybody want to answer that?
Well, you give her what you give that person, based on and at hand expenses. You don't have anything to compare it. You didn't go in and get a new quote on the insurance policy, and then you put a disclaimer that this is, is not 100%, that you need to have it checked with your bookkeeper, if you will, or your attorney. Because you cannot go in, the seller of the property say, this is what we're paying right now, and this is my expenses. And then you put that in there, and then you use that disclaimer language, simple as that.
In other words, yeah. So as a buyer, if I wanted to buy that from you, Nancy, I got to go check out what it's going to cost me to have this darn thing in the future. And it may and probably is different than what the seller's telling you his expenses are as of yesterday or even today.
Yeah, I guess it's really an accurate risk assessment evaluation of value, with all the factors factored in. And, I kind of have a pretty good understanding of what is the actual market value and how does that compare with what they think it is.
Yeah.
Hey, Keith,
Yes, Scott.
I would think that you could easily consider a property with a triple net lease with a former AAA tenant that is now in bankruptcy or closing huge percentage of stores, a
There you go.
distressed property, even though the bank thinks everything is fine and no one knows. Would that count?
Would that count?
I'd say every bit of knowledge and intelligence, it can help you accurately assess what's the cash flow the value and the reliability of the cash flow will help determine
yeah.
what a cap rate might be.
Yeah. So, it what that does is there's been lots of news stories over the last during this year, you see, oh, this major huge asset in this city just sold at, 25 cents on a dollar. Everybody's emphasizing stuff like that. But if you drill down into that, why did that sell at 25 cents on a dollar? Yes, some people who had money in their pocket that they can go pay cash for it are waiting for opportunities like that. But at the same time, what are their actual costs going to be once they own that property? It may be there's a whole lot of hidden costs behind the scenes that aren't being announced in these, in these stories. Right?
But you also have to, I think we also have to consider that expenses are a pass-through in triple net. You're not paying it as an owner, you add it to your rent. And
I will say most tenants look at their total cost of occupancy, including their triple nets.
tenants, yeah, exactly.
And their utilities
Yeah,
says, what does it cost to me to occupy? And that's going to have
agree
a
with you.
governor effect on how much net income is going to be available.
Yep.
Well,
In
and
a
I
triple
would
net world.
agree with Max that, it's passed through, but it absolutely affects or could affect the health of the tenant, which could affect your future revenue and cash flow.
Yeah, so we're talking about multiple subjects at the very same time.
Or narrowing the tenant pool substantially.
So if
Well,
the tenants,
Go ahead.
so if, say, 10% of the tenants are late in their rent payment, is that considered distressed? Or what if it's 40%? Like, the word distressed in residential has one meaning. It's a very definite meaning. They're behind on their payments. In commercial, right?
Yeah,
In commercial, so what does that look like? Let's fill that out. And I agree with Scott that, like, if a major tenant is in bankruptcy, yeah.
Like they have valuation of debt service coverage ratio and how that impacts loan, and is that going down? Is that creating more stress on the owner to be able to keep the payments up? That would be a very good indicator of what a level of distress there might be.
in the debt service world, yes. One thing, the other part of that story I read yesterday or the day before, I don't know what I was reading, I totally forgot. But they talked about the cost of construction materials are decreasing. So why are we not seeing the building of new increasing? Well, it's not just about the cost of materials in construction. Again, it
The
goes.
labor is not going down.
What is?
The labor is not going down.
Okay, there you go. Also, the price of fuel and the price of foods, they're up. And at some point that affects a lot of construction in a very indirect way. It's kind of weird. You gotta start connecting the dots and walk through that. Plus insurance, the cost of insurance. Debt service. Yeah.
Debt service, yeah.
Have we beat that up enough, guys? Are we done? Are we done with that?
Just two more things to add to that.
There
One,
you go.
you still have enormous blowback with interest rates. Things just don't pencil out long term. Secondly, it's an election year. And this reminds me a lot of 2016. 2020, I kind of throw out the window because it was the pandemic year, but 2016, Q2 and Q3 were absolutely disastrous for commercial real estate. And then as soon as the election was over, business picked up dramatically in November and in December, so deals could get done by the end of the year. And I suspect that's what's going to happen now, because 2023 was the worst year for sales volume since 2008. And I don't suspect that 2024 has been an awful lot better. And you combine that with the fact that it is an election year, we just got to wait till the election before things open up again. But I can't imagine anybody wanting to try to project out 3 or 4 years, which is what it would take to build something out right now, and try and do that. It makes no sense, which is why development's just not moving right now. You have to, if you've got land for sale, you got to sell it at a song or at a loss or just to get rid of it. And then because the developer's going to have to sit on it until these things start to get back under control again. So anyway, that's it, Keith. Thanks.
Thank you, Rich. We good with this subject? We're good? Distressed properties and TREP. What else do we want to discuss? We are at 1331 right now.
Can I ask people's advice on how they, I'm first one out, I just got my first contract, to represent some, to represent some tenants, and, they're really cheap. And so I wanted to, get some advice from the group. If you are experiencing tenant rep, like, how do you position yourself when your tenants, all they want to know is about pricing, and they just want you to go out and get the lower prices. And anyway, just I'm all ears.
What do you want us to tell you about dealing with somebody like that?
Well, they're telling you to do that, and then you go to the listing agent, and I don't want to lead with that. I want to lead with compatibility. I want to lead with, how qualified the tenants are. I want to lead with, is this a good fit? How could you, and the length of the term, before we talk about pricing. And there's the elephant in the room, and I want to address it because I'm one of them. Is my tenants are Chinese and they're all about money. They're very cheap and they want like 1,000 square foot and 2,000 square foot for the same net price. And so I can't do it. I mean, the listing agents are saying, well, it's per square foot. And if you have a 1,300 square foot versus a 1,600 square foot, then the price is different. And that totally makes sense. But my tenants, they want the most square footage for the least amount of price. And I don't want to represent that mentality. So, dealing with the cultural differences is something that I have to manage, but dealing with the listing brokers is, I've got the marching orders for my clients to say, go get the prices down, but I don't think that's a good way to approach it. So I'm reaching out to people that
Paul's
are
got an
more
answer.
experienced.
Paul wants to start it off. Go ahead, Paul.
Let's
Nancy,
hear.
Nancy, I think you have a residential background, real estate background?
No,
Very, very short, very, very small.
Okay, so it's all market data driven, market statistics data driven, okay? I've got a client that I'm finishing up with right now that similarly, they all have a budget, so they all have a price per month they want to pay, or per annual price that fits into their company's budget. And then you go out to the marketplace and you look at, 30, 40, 50 office space for rent or whatever you're looking to rent retail. And you bring that data to your client and show them the low is $24 a square foot. The high is $34 a square foot. You want A class, B class, C class often. They all want A. They all want the beautiful lobby with all the new lighting. Building was painted, new landscape, or a brand new building, but they want to pay C class rates. So you have to educate them. Do you want beautiful A, B, or C class buildings? What's your budget? And these are the budget. Usually you can bend the price a little bit, but you can't make a $38 or $40 a square foot space become 24. It just doesn't happen. So you just have to educate them and bring them the data and show them this is the market and what, based on your square footage, here's your price point. Where do you want to be? Compare and contrast the data in the market.
Right. So they want me to basically go out to listing agents that has something listed for 26 a square foot, triple net, and they want to talk it down to say like 20 or 17. So and that seems unreasonable to me. But they're like, go do it, go do it, go.
I was just going to ask, is your client reasonable? There are plenty of people that would want your help, but if they're not reasonable, might not be worth working on.
Yeah,
So-
you might need to walk away from that client. If you try to educate them and they're not listening to the market, not to Nancy or Paul, but to the market, and they don't want to agree with market data, if they become unreasonable, you're wasting your time. Move on to the next client.
Well, the reason why they're basing these numbers is she already has a business and that's what she's paying. So, and that was 5 years ago. And so she's using that saying, well, I can just duplicate it. But the pricing, but it's a different town. One's in Beaverton, one's in Vancouver.
Although then you have the opportunity to say, if you're in a below market lease, if you leave, we can get you some money because it is way below market. As an example. And also, I like to think how many units does someone have that makes them more reasonable if they have a lot of units or if they have their commercial property owners themselves. You can say, well, would you rent your place for that? Because I could get 100 tenants for your place at that rate because it's an unreasonable rate.
Right.
Devil's advocate.
Well, I mean, yes, they said something like, oh, well, if you show us all these properties and we end up not going with you, do I still have to pay you? I'm like, well, okay, would you do that? Like, would you want to be in my shoes? Would you want me to run all over town and show you these things and then not pay me? because they were balking at paying the difference if the landlord doesn't offer broker compensation.
You know, there's always a silver lining in everything, Nancy, and in your case, if you were to start reaching out to every leasing agent in whatever that market is, and then tell you, no, it's $27, they're not gonna get 20. That's great because you now have their info and you're building your database so that in the future, you could do that one
Yes.
email out to all of them at one time saying, I got a client need. I mean, there's always a silver lining, but I wouldn't drive around everywhere when it's that so much discrepancy, like Paul said, between what's going on in the market and what they want. You
Yeah.
do better just sitting there and calling everybody on the phone, every leasing agent out there of every property, and start talking to them.
Yeah, I think
You
you're right.
might come across something. Something could pop up. You never know. But
Yeah, yeah.
overall, at least at least everybody get to know who Nancy is.
Well, I have a reason to talk to them and reach out, even if
Yeah.
this doesn't, even if I can't find, you know, that unicorn for them that they're looking for. So that
Sounds
may be a
good.
good exercise. Thank you. Thank you all.
Max, did you have anything on that? Since you've been in retail all your life?
No, I mean,
Okay.
I think Paul said really well. I have a lot of clients that they come in, especially when they're coming from, in particular, that's just my pick on that. Is like, you know, Middle Eastern folks, you know, they come in and they say, oh, tell them I'm going to pay cash, or I got this, or I got that. And then, you know, they offer 20, 25% below the market, whatever it is. And it doesn't work regardless. You know, you can be, excuse the expression, you can be God. The guy's not going to lease it to you when he can lease it tomorrow at $25 to $30 and you're offering $20. It's not going to work. And waste of your time for sure. And you're going to be known, if you will, as somebody that have, you know, client that are not reasonable, and you would not be able to get the phone call that you make responded to you in the
Yeah.
future, and you end up alienating yourself from the rest of the people in the market. I mean, I
Exactly.
experienced that, and I learned not to try to force that. You know, I mean,
Right.
as he said, you go ask your client, let's say, how much is yours? And you tell him this is what his property is, same in the market that it is, that's how much his rent is offering. Ask him whether they take less than what he has paid on his previous ones. And, you know, they're going to say no. So you say, why do you think that the other person would want to give it to you? Because you are beautiful, or you are smarter, or whatever, you know? You just tell them that doesn't work that way.
I have tried to use the shoe and the other foot analogy, and each time they're like, no, we wouldn't do that. So, okay. And I do not want to be known as that agent that represents.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, I do not want. And that's why I pushed back and I said, let's not lead with price. Let's lead with alignment. So, but that's a
Nancy.
good point. Thank you. Yes.
One other question, or one other comment. If you're in a certain building or a small neighborhood, you know, like where they want to be in, I would check the vacancy rates when you're talking to the other agents in a building and say, what's the vacancy rate in your building? Can you tell me that? Or maybe it's published in a business journal. And if the vacancy rates are, you know, let's say it's 95% occupied, or 95, 98, in the 90s, they don't have to negotiate. They got a formula on their building for net operating income to figure out they're going to have some vacancy at some point in time. So they don't have to give it away. If their vacancy rate's 50%, well, then they're going to lower the rents to push up the tenants. You know, the market again will take care of that. So explain that to your tenant, or your tenants, that, you know, the market will bear what it will bear. And if the building was in poor condition, or the market was in poor condition, the rates would go lower. There's a reason why the rates are what they are. But I would check vacancy rates.
That's a great point. Thanks.
Yep.
All right. Anybody else?
Yeah, well, the one compensating factor, which I don't think is all that important here, but there are certain markets where the realtors make fun of certain ethnic realtors that take very cheap listings for 1 or 2%, and they make it up in volume. But Keith, I think that's very hard to do in commercial, isn't it?
Yes,
That's what I thought.
Asher?
I was just gonna say that and I know I'm probably the youngest one on the call, but in
You
my
look kinda young.
experience, is what?
You look kind of young.
Well, thank you. So what I've found is the most profitable thing someone can do for you is to signal that they're a good client. The second most profitable thing someone can do for you is to signal that they are not worth your time.
Exactly.
So when I've called up a client and they ask me which real estate broker that they were using am I, and I'm like, wait a minute, how many realtors or how many real estate brokers are you working with? And they're
Yeah.
like 4. I'm like, well, now it's 3. Simple
There
as
you go.
that.
Did you have a contract with them?
No, it was years ago when I was doing tenant rep, residential tenant rep. And I was trying to, well, I was representing a buyer at that point, and he was trying to work with all the realtors, and I just told him like I'm not gonna have my time wasted.
Yeah.
Did not have a contract with him. It was a relatively new relationship, but he wanted me to schedule all these showings, and I mean, no one signs contracts early on the buy side at least. So that kind of situation.
They're gonna start doing that now, though. I was on a Zoom earlier today with some residential people, and they said it's gonna become like commercial now. You've got to meet your client, educate them, and get to a contract immediately now in residential, which is what we do in commercial, is get the deal done up front, what you're gonna get paid, how long you're gonna work for them and all that.
So is that NAR settlement affecting the CRE world?
So
I don't think so.
the CRE world in general, we're totally transparent for the most part with our clients. We're not transparent with each other, I can tell you that, but with our clients, in other words, the whole issue of the lawsuits in the residential world was lack of transparency between the brokers, the agents, the MLSs, the boards, and the general public. There was a lot of lack of transparency, and that's what this is all about. In other words, sellers were being shocked at the closing table, like, what? Why is that agent getting that kind of money out of my commissions I paid you? That kind of thing. None of that was totally transparent. In our world, we're dealing with our clients all the time. I mean, it's just me and you as my client. And we know how I'm getting paid, and we know what you're paying me. We already know that.
Well, my clients were pushing back. They're like, why do I have to sign a contract with you? I never signed contracts with anybody. And then they came out, they went and got me the spaces, and then they got paid at the end. So I said, no, that's maybe I did wrong, but I sent them this information about NAR settlement. And that seemed to appease them, but I wasn't sure if
But to answer your question about the CRE world, has basically been doing a whole lot of what all the complaints were about that created these lawsuits. Okay, we were already doing that in our world.
I understand that, but there are, have every single person in this room.
No, it's not like that anywhere on the planet.
No. My question was,
Yeah.
have you guys in the past represented tenants without signing a tenant rep agreement from the get-go? Bye, Nelson.
Anybody? Okay.
When I was new, I did that, but I won't do it anymore.
Okay, so it is up to us. It's not legal or illegal to have a rep agreement or not, except with EXP, we're required to, but that's just an EXP rule.
And
Right?
if you want to get paid, you better
Of
talk.
course.
Yeah.
Of course, but I'm just saying there is that gray area where there are a lot of, if you're representing tenants or representing buyers, you move through this kind of implied agency rather than, here, let's sit down and sign some papers before I can show you properties.
So understand that a lot of us, or a lot of our industry, we're not dealing with a consumer and only dealing with them once. A lot of us have a lot of clients that are clients for life. I mean, they're constantly doing stuff with us.
Right.
So it's the relationship's already there. There's really not a need to get a signed piece of paper on every transaction because they're already your
You
client.
trust each other. Yeah.
You've already been paid before,
Right.
you guys have worked together before. But
Right.
I think
But
the
it-
other thing is serious business people that buy and sell, lease and all that, especially the more experience they have, the more, they are experienced. They know how the game's played. And if you're serious, you know how the game's played, you're going to take care of each other. You're not looking to get one over on anybody. If somebody's a shyster like that, that's why you don't work with them. Or if they don't understand the culture, I'd say this is our culture in the US. This is how it works. You can accept it or you can fight it. But if you fight it, it probably won't work and you're going to come out worse than where you want to be. What is your business? What do you want to accomplish? Why do you need space? Let me help you get that space because I understand the culture here.
So we're at 48 after the hour, 12 minutes until the top of the hour. Nancy, are you okay?
Yes, I'm fine. Thank you very much.
Okay. Is there anything else somebody wanted to go ahead, Camille?
Hey, I got a question on ground leases. For example, industrial land that is for trucking ground lease. How to find accurate comparable, comps that have been done in the past, year or two, for example. I can find comps for leasing buildings, but it's kind of hard to find the ground leases.
Blair, do you want to answer that? You want me to answer? Can anybody else answer that before I do?
I've
Are you
sold.
familiar with iOS, the newsletter, I guess to call it, that comes out?
Newsletter, iOS, I don't know about it.
Okay. It comes out, as a matter of fact, I just had it up too. They, let me,
Okay, Max, while he's looking at
go
that,
ahead and I'll get the information. Hang on a second.
Normally, if you cannot find it in your immediate area, surrounding area, what you do, you go in and check in other states or counties, that are near you, and then you can use those numbers. I sold a 22 acre not too long ago, and when they did the appraisal, that's what they did. They went to Kentucky. I'm in Tennessee, but they went into Kentucky and used some of the Kentucky comp sales out there and some of our sales that we had in Memphis. So basically, you have to expand your area that you are looking at to be able to get anything realistically compatible.
Right.
Yeah, great question. In most states, you don't have to make your lease public, right? So
Yep.
it's hard
Yeah.
to do a real good search.
That's right. And I use CoStar, but it's up to the people in the transaction to report the rate. And I haven't been able to search like just ground lease. There you can search by square footage for buildings, but not ground lease.
Or you can go into the, I don't know how, you can go to the assessor's website and find the percentage that the land is valued as compared to the total of the building and the land, and find out, and then kind of deduce those numbers and see if that would work. That's going to be kind of difficult sometimes, but
Yeah.
different ways you can do it.
Yeah, have you used Moody's for something like that? Has anybody used Moody's for getting comps?
Oh, Moody's, no.
I'm sure it
Yeah,
has less data than Crexi or LoopNet on something specific like that. Now, in my metro area, suburb of New York, there is a few groups that specialize in buying or originating new ground leases, usually when there is a structure on a property. And maybe if you can find the investors who do that in your area, they might give you a nice idea of a price range.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. There is like a small group who do these deals, but I'm doing a deal with them representing a tenant, and I need to get competitive rates, and it's not easy to get.
Camille,
Are you looking for IOS properties, or are you looking for industrial land for development? Those are two totally separate situations.
Yeah, yes, it's an outdoor storage property, trucking.
Okay. That's
No.
IOS.
Yeah.
If you'll look in the chat, there are two links that I just put in there. And both of them will help you with IOS information.
what is
Okay.
iOS?
In industrial outside storage.
There you go.
Thank you.
Now, let me bring it down to a simple level, which I've seen recently as well. In CCIM, in our daily, what we call CCIM Connect, people ask questions about things all the time. And that was a discussion about 3-4 weeks ago, Camille. Ground leases, how do you determine a ground lease? Okay, to be very simple, you're representing the tenant, right?
Yes. Mhm.
It goes right back to what we were talking about earlier. What's their budget? All they can do is say, I'm going to pay this to park my trucks here. What do you think? And the landowner's gonna say, well, maybe I need a little bit more money just because I want more money. Or they might say, okay, sure, that's good. No money, that's a lot better than no money. I mean, it could boil down to what does one person think the value is and what does the other person think the value is, right?
Right.
Yeah. Hate to say it that way, but if you have no structure on the property, then ground leases, it's up to the guy who owns it and the person who wants to use it.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's a lot of back and forth in these things, and maybe like 2.5 years back,
Good
these
gracious.
they were super hot. But now what happened is the trucking companies are not able to charge as much per mile and compared to 2 years ago. So their rates went down, and their profitability went down a little bit. Not a lot, but I mean they're doing okay. But it's not like so lucrative like it was before.
Let me just real quick, does anybody have any announcements? I hate to end the subject real quick, but any announcements because of the time frame here? Because I'm going to stop the recording after your announcements. Anybody got any announcements?
Keith, you want to update on any builds that are still upcoming if someone wants to go or bring people?
Yeah, I mean, you go to Build Event 2024 and look at what's still out there. Most of the build events are still upcoming. BUILD events. They're still out there. Is that what you want to know, Scott?
Yes, if anyone's interested in attraction,
Yeah.
commercial or residential, probably mostly residential, but those are the best events we have.
Okay. We do have EXPCon the end of October. Love to see everybody in Miami Beach area, Miami Convention Center. That'd be great. I can see all of you in October at the end. Max, I'll see you in Houston.
Yes, sir.
September with
What day you
CCIM.
coming in?
I forgot. We can take that offline. I have to look. The day before any of it starts. I can't remember the date. So anybody else? I'm going to end the recording at least. So hang on.